Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. I'm Jamie, that's Dave, that's Heath. Joining us now is the legendary guy himself, Robert Turbin. And we're going to talk about running backs here on Fantasy Football Today. So let's show you the rankings, 1 through 12. You're not going to really see any surprises, I think, on this list. Maybe, a Quinshon Judkins jumps out that he's now a top 12 running back in our consensus rankings. You see Croskey-Merrit. We'll talk about him as a start for this week. But not a lot of big surprises. The one thing I think we got to keep an eye on is number 7 there. I think I got the numbers right now. It's Rico Dowdle, because Chuba Hubbard is trending toward playing. If he does play, Robert, I'll get to you in a second, but what do you guys think? Are we going to drop Rico Dowdle? How are we approaching the Panther situation?
I think you've got to drop Rico Dowdle a little bit, but I think the cat's out of the bag, pun intended, because it's the Panthers. Get it? Ha, ha, ha. I think he's going to be the lead running back, probably get at least 2/3 of the touches in that backfield.
I think the first key this week, that might happen this week, because we don't know exactly how healthy Chuba Hubbard is. Even when he said he was going to play this week, he didn't know how much he was going to play. And so maybe 2/3 split for this week makes sense. I think when Chuba Hubbard is fully healthy, we'll probably have one of those games where they each get a series, and then they each get another series, and then we go from there. But low-end RB2 for Dowdle if Hubbard's back.
Robert, when you see a running back perform the way Dowdle has, and knowing that Chuba Hubbard was the starter, do the Panthers make a switch, or do they just stick with the hot hand? How do you approach it?
I think they stick with the hot hand. At least they continue to give him more opportunities. Even though Hubbard's the starter, you'll see a good, healthy dose of Rico Dowdle still.
Makes some sense. And let's take a look at the running back rankings, 13 through 26. And we have a guy on this list now that is, come out of nowhere, and that's Kamani Vidal. So, Robert, when you saw what Vidal was able to do against the Dolphins, taking into account the Miami run defense is as bad as maybe any team we've seen in the last 5 or 10 years, Vidal was awesome. What do we expect going into week number 7 as they take on a Colts defense that's not great, but obviously better than what the Dolphins showed?
Well, I think anytime you're a young back and you prove that, hey, you can, take a good chunk of carries and do something well with it, the team, they have to give you more opportunities. And so I think we'll see somewhat of a repeat performance from Vidal. The Colts are a better defense than the Dolphins are, but those opportunities are going to be there, and I think they'll find more ways to get him the football.
Yeah, I think forget about the efficiency in that game, because you don't get to play the Dolphins every week. But the thing that you love...
We're basically playing the Dolphins now. There's no defense in front of us.
67% snap share, 21 touches in the game, looked much, much better than Haskins. I think you just view him as a high-end RB2 that you're expecting to get at least 18 touches every week until Amari and Hampton's back.
And Dave, he's a start for you. Do you look at this, though, before they kick off Sunday? Are you trying to trade him at this point? Because the value may not be as high as it is, and you get at least a 3-game window, if not more, because we don't know what happens.
I would have traded him already if I could have, because we know that what he did last week was against the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins are going to make every running back look great. Quinshon Judkins is going to have a monster game this week. But if I need a running back, and pretty much every fantasy manager needs a running back, of course I'm going to hang on to him. We don't know when Omarion Hampton's going to be back for the Chargers. And I know there's been rumors about the Chargers looking to trade for a running back. This guy might be their answer. They might not have to make that deal.
All right, so we'll see what happens. Again, Dave's going to start Kamani Vidal. We'll talk about the starts and sits coming up in a second. You can show the next list of rankings, 25 through 36. And this is where we get into the Seahawks running back. So, Robert, you're obviously very connected to this organization. Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, we're getting differing reports about, are they going to continue this split? Does Charbonnet maybe get more work? What's going on with Walker? Give us your 2 cents on what's going on with the Seattle backfield and maybe who we can count on moving forward, knowing that's a tough run defense that they're facing Monday night against the Texans.
Well, it's going to be difficult against Houston. When they were both healthy early in the season, Charbonnet was getting the bulk of the opportunities, and the run game was much more productive. And I think the Seahawks are going to lean that way this second half of the year.
Okay, so maybe we see a little bit more Charbonnet. I mean, clearly everybody drafted Ken Walker to be a starter. Charbonnet's been getting the high-level touches when they get inside the 5, touchdown opportunities. We saw the last 2 weeks that it's been minimal carries for Walker by comparison, and the catching, the work in the passing game has not been there. So are we ready to punt on Ken Walker at this point, Heath, or are we just going to sort of wait this out and see how it shakes out?
There's one thing that keeps anybody from wanting to sit Ken Walker, and it's FOMO. Because you know that he can take a carry from his own 5-yard line, and all of a sudden he's just scored 15 fantasy points. He makes those plays, not regularly enough, but I think where we've got him at 25 is the perfect place. If you don't have 2 actual starting running backs, you start Ken Walker. If you have to start a flex, you can start Ken Walker. But if you can get away from him, I'd certainly, if I had Rico Dowdle and Kamani Vidal and Ken Walker, it's easy to sit Ken Walker.
If we took a time machine back to August and we said, you might start Kamani Vidal over Ken Walker, you'd think that something went wrong with Ken Walker, and he must be on the shelf. Why wouldn't you start Zach Charbonnet? No. These guys are splitting touches. It's maddening. And I'd like to think that eventually the Seahawks will figure it out and give Walker more work. He's kind of a buy low target for me in that regard.
All right, so we'll see if maybe Luck comes out with a better stat line this week. We know he's got that home run potential like you talked about, Heath, so he's probably going to need that because anytime they get close to the end zone, he's coming off the field and Charbonnet's coming on. All right, let's get to the starts and the sits. And so, Robert, the guy that you're targeting for this week had a bad game last week when there were some expectations for Ja'Cory Croskey-Merrit against the Bears. Now he gets what's the dream matchup, maybe aside from the Dolphins, taking on the Cowboys. How good can Bill be in Week 7?
Yeah, this can be a nice bounce-back game for JCM, Bill Croskey-Merrit. The Dallas Cowboys have been horrible defensively this season, and, he hasn't been as good as, I guess, advertised in some ways, for lack of a better word. And so I think this is an opportunity for him this week to really have a big game.
Robert, when you look at his performance so far, there's been some big runs. Obviously, he's had some touchdown opportunities 2 weeks ago. He scored twice. Not a lot of work in the passing game, though. We know that's not necessarily something Jaden Daniels does with him. He did that with Austin Eckler last year a little bit. But does the lack of work in the passing game concern you at all about his high-end production?
Not this week in particular against the Cowboys. Maybe long-term, if we look at it from a rest of season standpoint, that's not been a part of his game. You'll see McNichols kind of come in a lot of those third down situations now. But I think he's still developing as a runner. And so, I think most of his production is going to come from the backfield on the ground.
Another guy that's going to get a lot of production on the ground, Heath, is Jordan Mason. And, we've sort of been talking about a lot of these backup running backs. He's kind of the first guy, that got an opportunity to take advantage of an injury and run with it. First game was great, what he did against the Bengals. What we saw against the Browns, was probably a little bit of a surprise because he found the end zone. So coming off a bye, what do you think about him taking on an Eagles defense that, Jalen Carter in, Jalen Carter out? It's been a little bit different to sort of judge this defense that he's facing.
Well, the one thing that's been pretty consistent is every week but one, they give up at least 15 fantasy points to a running back. The Chiefs are the only team that has not had a running back score 15 fantasy points against the Eagles. Some backs have done it with passing work, and he's probably not going to do that. But I just am not sure that it's a great run defense right now. It has not prevented running backs from scoring, and I think this is going to be a close game where Minnesota can commit to the run. If J.J. McCarthy starts, we may even see even more Jordan Mason carries because they don't want him to throw too much. I like him as a mid RB2, better in half PPR than he is in full PPR.
I'll tell you what, 3 catches each of the last 2 weeks. That's impressive for a guy that we didn't expect to be involved in the passing game. Now, we do have one more game until Aaron Jones is eligible to return, so there might be a sell-high window here for Jordan Mason, but clearly ride the hot hand, at least for this week, as he takes on the Eagles. So, Dave, anything else you want to add about Kamani Vidal? I know he's a starter for you.
Well, I just look at the Colts matchup, and Robert said it. This is a much better matchup than what Vidal went up against last week. That's easy to say, but I don't really believe that the Colts run defense is going to shut down Kamani Vidal. As silly as that sounds, I don't think it's going to happen. And if Quentin Johnson plays, that pushes the safeties back, means fewer 8-in-the-box situations, and Vidal can catch the ball out of the backfield too.
Should be fun to see how he does. I'm looking forward to tonight's game with Jaylen Warren. He's started the week for week number 7. 8 running backs so far this season, 14.5 PPR points or more against Cincinnati. Number 1 in most fantasy points allowed to the position. Jaylen Warren gets his first rushing touchdown in tonight's game. He's already caught a pass and found the end zone. That was in week 1, but he has not scored since then. We know what happened in week 4. It was the Kenneth Gainwell show. Bye in week 5. Last week, not the best performance for him against the Browns, but I think he has a huge game against the other Ohio team in this matchup tonight.
I don't know. He had good efficiency in that game, almost 5 yards a carry.
He played well, just not good fantasy production.
No, that's true.
Speaking of bad fantasy production, let's go to the sits now. And Robert, I want to just get your take in general on the Patriots backfield. You got Ramondre Stevenson as a sit. What are they waiting for? When are we going to see Trevion Henderson?
I think they're waiting to trust him more, I guess. I really don't know. I would play him personally, Jamie. I think that he's ready. There might be other pieces. We look at it. Obviously, we look at things from a fantasy standpoint, but there might be other holistic things just as a running back that Trey Hendrickson is just not ready to do yet in terms of third down pass protection and those types of things. You just never know. But I think that if they give him more opportunities, it'll allow him to speed up his development. And I think he could eventually take over that backfield as long as they're willing to let him grow and get better in that role. But Ramondre Stevenson, to me is a guy that's regressing in a lot of ways, and he's a sit for me this week.
Yeah, it makes some sense. I mean, the matchup actually is not bad. And I do like the fact that Mike Vrabel said they want to commit more to their running game. But maybe, just maybe, that would be Henderson more so than Stevenson. It's a great call.
He looked much better last week. And the way you run against Tennessee is to attack the edges. And you can't do that with Ramondre Stevenson. You can do that with Travion Henderson. Good buy low window that's still open for the rookie.
Yep, and like you said, this might be the last opportunity to get him if, in fact, they commit to him. So, Dave, again, Ken Walker's a guy that you're trying to get away from this week. Is 25 too high in our rankings based on what Robert just said?
The problem is that I don't know if I can find even 3 more running backs that I would rank ahead of Kenneth Walker in the rankings. But the matchup is tough. Houston's run defense allowing just 3.3 yards per carry in its past 3 games. 3 explosive runs allowed all season long by Houston, and Walker's touches have dwindled from 16 in weeks 1 through 4 to 11 in his past 2 games. And don't even ask about touches near the goal line, because that's just going to depress all of us. And we don't need that. Try and sit Kenneth Walker if you can.
Heath, you're trying to sit Chase Brown as well. It's been a frustrating season. Did you see any signs of hope last week with Joe Flacco starting, though, that maybe things can start to improve? I mean, again, I'm with you. I think everybody's trying to get away from it if you can. But anything that for the future that might help Chase Brown?
If you wanted to be positive, you would say the rushing efficiency was better. He averaged 4.7 yards per carry. He also had 9 rush attempts, and he played 55% of the snaps. And when Chase Brown broke out last year and became this great sleeper pick, it wasn't really because he did so many great things. It was because they played him 80% of the snaps every single game. He's played 55% of the snaps 3 of the last 4 games. Samaje Perine playing almost as much as Chase Brown. And when you look at Chase Brown averaging 2.7 yards per carry, it's not even as if we can say, why don't they stop playing Samaje Perine so much? Perine's been better.
Yeah, it's just been frustrating. So maybe, again, you see something with Joe Flacco, full week of practice. Last week he was brought in middle of the week, and the offense maybe looks a little bit better. But bad offensive line, bad offense in general, tough matchup. Yes, sit Chase Brown. Robert, I'm going to have Tony Pollard as a sit, but I want to get your take on just the backfield split with a new coach coming in. So they fire Callahan, and now they promote Mike McCoy. You had Tyjae Spears play more snaps than Tony Pollard last week. It's easy to sit Pollard in this matchup against the Patriots. They're really good against the run. But do you see maybe an opportunity for Tyjae Spears to get more work, just taking a bigger view of it, looking at how Pollard has really struggled to produce when given all this opportunity, and now Spears, 2 games removed from that ankle injury, should be back to full strength?
Yeah, Spears is younger. You get a new coach coming in. They want to see what they have in terms of their young guys. The season is, somewhat of a lost season for the Tennessee Titans. So now it's all about evaluating, who can you build your future with if I'm going to be the guy taking over moving forward, And so you got to approach it like that. And I think Spears is going to continue to get more opportunities, which is not a good thing because I have Tony Pollard. Okay? and I'm very slim. I'm very slim at running back right now. So I need him to at least get in the end zone or something this week.
This is one of 2 games like this week for me, including tonight. I would start both Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell over Chase Brown. I would start both Ramondre and Travion over Tony Pollard.
Listen, it could work out. We'll see if it's tough to trust the Patriots backfield, but I see where you're going with it. So, but yeah, tough to trust the Titans backfield at this point, just looking at what is happening. But you never know. You always get that new coach bump, and maybe the coaching change helps the Titans. They have a lot of, I think, remorse, maybe getting rid of Mike Vrabel. So we'll see if there's a little revenge game on both sides for the coach and the team that let him go. All right, Robert, we'll let you go now. We appreciate your time here as always on Fantasy Football Today. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back and look at the wide receiver rankings, tell you who to start, who to sit, and who's healthy. That's next on FFT.